The silence in the house was a heavy, suffocating blanket. Samuel Carter, a man whose hands had shaped wood into art for 40 years, now felt like a piece of old, unwanted furniture himself. At 68, his presence in the home of his adopted daughter, Jessica, and her husband, Mark, had become an unspoken inconvenience, a relic of a past they were eager to shed. He sat at the small kitchen table, polishing a silver locket, its surface worn smooth by the passage of time. Inside was a tiny, faded photograph of a 6-year-old Jessica, beaming with a gap-toothed smile on the day he officially became her father. He could still feel the phantom weight of her small hand in his, the absolute trust in her eyes. Now, those eyes barely met his. Mark strode into the kitchen, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice a slick, confident purr as he discussed closing a real estate deal. He shot Samuel a look that was less a greeting and more an appraisal of an obstacle. "Jess, are we ever going to clear this clutter out?" he said loudly into his phone, gesturing vaguely towards Samuel's corner of the kitchen. "Some of us are trying to project an image of success here." Samuel's shoulders, broad from a lifetime of labor, slumped just a fraction. He quietly closed the locket and slipped it back into his pocket. He had poured every penny he had into this house, made it a home, a sanctuary for the little girl who had lost everything. Now, he was the clutter. Jessica entered, her face a mask of strained neutrality. She was a woman caught in a current, too weak or too unwilling to swim against it. She saw the hurt in her father's eyes, but chose to look away, focusing instead on the pristine quartz countertop. "Dad, we need to talk," she began, her voice brittle. Mark ended his call with a triumphant snap of his flip phone. "No, let's not beat around the bush, Jess. It's time for a change. A big one." He leaned against the counter, his arms crossed, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Your father understands. We're moving up in the world. This house, it served its purpose. We're selling it." Samuel's gaze drifted around the room. The pencil marks on the doorframe measuring Jessica's height, the small chip in the tile from when she dropped a can of peaches trying to help him cook, the faint scent of the lemon oil he used on the cabinets he'd built himself. It was more than a house. It was a living album of their lives. Selling. Samuel's voice was a low whisper, raspy with disbelief. "We've found the perfect place in the Northgate Estates," Jessica said, a flicker of genuine excitement finally breaking through her composure. "It has a pool, a 3-car garage. It's everything we've worked for." The hung in the air, sharp and exclusive. Samuel felt a cold dread creep into his heart. "And me?" he asked, the words feeling foreign and pathetic on his tongue. Mark stepped forward, placing a hand on Jessica's shoulder in a gesture of feigned solidarity. "Look, Samuel," he said, using his name like a formal dismissal. "We've found a wonderful place for you, too. Top notch. It's an assisted living facility just on the other side of the county. They'll take great care of you. It's the best option." Jessica chimed in, her words rehearsed and hollow. "You'll have people your own age, activities. You won't have to worry about a thing. It's for your own good, Dad. For his own good." The phrase echoed in the hollow space that had just been carved into his chest. They spoke of him as if he were a problem to be solved, a line item on a budget to be managed. They weren't just asking him to move out, they were exiling him. They were erasing him from the picture of the perfect life they were so desperate to create. He looked at his daughter, searching for the little girl in the locket, the one who cried when he got a splinter, and who believed he could fix anything in the world. He found no trace of her. In her place was a stranger, her eyes reflecting the cold ambition of her husband. Samuel Carter, a man who had built a life on the foundations of love and sacrifice, was being evicted from the heart of the person he cherished most. He felt the floor give way beneath him, but his expression remained a mask of quiet dignity. He simply nodded, the movement slow and deliberate. "I see," he said. And in that moment, he did. He saw everything. The heartbreak was a physical blow, stealing his breath, but he would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him crumble. Not yet. The final days were an exercise in quiet agony. The house, once a symphony of shared memories, became a cacophony of packing tape and hollow echoes. Mark was a whirlwind of impatient energy, slapping "SOLD" stickers on furniture and pointedly asking Samuel if he was done with that yet, every few hours. Jessica, meanwhile, had perfected the art of avoidance. She'd busy herself in rooms he wasn't in, her phone conversations loud and filled with cheerful plans for drapery and landscaping at the new house. Samuel moved through the dismantling of his life like a ghost. He packed his few belongings into a single, worn suitcase. A handful of flannel shirts, his well-worn Bible, a small box of carpentry tools he couldn't bear to part with, and the silver locket. Each item was a testament to a life of simple, profound love, a life that was being packed away and discarded. One afternoon, while Jessica was out with a decorator, Samuel stood in her empty bedroom. He ran his hand over the windowsill he had built, remembering the night a terrifying thunderstorm had sent a 6-year-old Jessica scrambling into his arms. He had sat in the rocking chair in the corner, singing to her until the storm passed, and she fell asleep, her small body trusting and secure against his chest. "I'll always protect you," he had whispered into her hair. Always. The memory was so vivid it was a fresh wound. He retreated to his own small room and closed the door. Taking a deep breath, he pulled out an old, prepaid cell phone, a device Jessica and Mark knew nothing about. He dialed a number from memory. "David," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his soul. "Samuel. I was wondering when you'd call." A calm, professional voice replied on the other end. "Are you all right?" "They're selling the house." "They're putting me in a state home," Samuel said, the words tasting like ash. There was a pause, thick with unspoken indignation. "I see," David finally said. "The paperwork is in order. The board is ready for my signal." Samuel looked out his window at the rose bushes he'd planted for his late wife, their blooms a vibrant red against the coming dusk. "It's time, David," he said, a profound sadness settling over him. "It's time." The day of his departure was gray and overcast, the sky weeping a slow, miserable drizzle. Mark had already left for a critical meeting, leaving Jessica to perform the final, awkward duty. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, tapping her foot. "The van from the facility will be here any minute." "Dad," she said, her tone attempting to be helpful but landing on dismissive. Samuel picked up his suitcase. It felt impossibly light. He walked towards the door, pausing in front of his daughter. For a fleeting second, he saw a flicker of conflict in her eyes, a shadow of the girl she used to be. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, buried under layers of ambition and denial. She gave him a quick, perfunctory hug, her body stiff. I'll try to visit soon, she lied. Samuel didn't answer. He simply looked at her, his gaze holding all the love and all the disappointment in the world. He walked out the front door for the last time, not looking back. He couldn't bear to. He stood on the curb, the drizzle dampening his worn jacket. Jessica watched from the window, waiting for the white, state-logoed van to appear and complete the transaction, to finally free her. But the vehicle that pulled up to the curb was not a van. It was a sleek, black Lincoln sedan, its windows darkly tinted. A man in a simple, dark suit stepped out, opened the rear door, and held it for Samuel with a respectful nod. From the window, Jessica frowned, confused. Who was that? Some sort of private car service from the facility. Samuel got into the car without a word. The door closed with a soft, expensive thud, sealing him away from his old life. As the sedan pulled away from the curb, gliding silently down the street, Jessica felt a strange and unsettling pang. It wasn't guilt, it was curiosity. A tiny, nagging feeling that she had just witnessed the end of a story she had completely misread. Freedom tasted like champagne and debt. No sooner had the black sedan disappeared down the street than Jessica and Mark launched into their new life with frenzied enthusiasm. The old house sold in a week, and they poured every cent of the profit, plus a dangerously large new mortgage, into their Northgate Estates dream home. It was a monument to materialism, cold, expansive, and echoing with emptiness. They threw a lavish housewarming party, Mark swaggering about, boasting of his business acumen, while Jessica showed off the Italian marble and designer fixtures, feeling a hollow triumph. Meanwhile, Samuel Carter was experiencing a different reality entirely. The Lincoln sedan had driven him not to a bleak county facility, but to the penthouse floor of one of the city's most exclusive private residences. His room was a sprawling suite with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the skyline. A fire crackled in a modern fireplace, and on a mahogany desk sat a file, its cover embossed with the name. The Carter Foundation. David Chen stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back. He was a sharp, immaculately dressed man whose calm demeanor masked a fiercely protective loyalty. "It's a shame it had to come to this, Samuel," David said, his gaze fixed on the city below. "I know," Samuel sighed, sinking into a plush leather armchair that felt alien to his body. "For 40 years, I was just Dad, a carpenter. I wanted her to grow up normal. I wanted whoever she married to love her for her, not for a bank account." The story spilled out in the quiet luxury of the room. The workplace accident that had crushed his leg and ended his career had come with a massive, confidential settlement. On David's advice, Samuel, then a young widower with a newly adopted daughter, had invested it all. He was a natural, his quiet patience and long-term perspective making him a brilliant, if unconventional, investor. His fortune had grown silently, exponentially, into a staggering sum of over $5 million. He lived on a modest carpenter's pension, pouring his love and attention into Jessica, his greatest treasure. "My biggest fear," Samuel said, his voice thick with emotion, "was that the money would poison everything, that it would become the reason for every I love you. It seems I failed. I hid the money, but the poison of wanting it was there all along." David slid the foundation file across the desk. "Well, that poison is about to meet its antidote." Everything is in place. When you bought that house, I advised you to place the deed into a private trust, with the Carter Foundation as the sole beneficiary. You and, upon your passing, Jessica, were granted lifetime residency rights, but never ownership. She and her husband had no legal right to sell that property. Samuel stared into the fire. He had built that trust to protect Jessica's future, to ensure she would always have a roof over her head. He never imagined he would have to use it as a weapon against her. What Jessica and Mark didn't realize, David continued, his voice hardening, is that in their rush to cash in, they signed documents attesting to clear and unencumbered ownership. That's fraud, Samuel. They didn't just sell a house. They sold something that didn't belong to them. The plan was not one of revenge, but of consequence, a lesson forged in the very crucible of the law they had so arrogantly flouted. Samuel felt no joy, only a deep, abiding sorrow for the daughter who had forced his hand. He had wanted to give her the world. Instead, he had to teach her its true cost. The high of the new house wore off quickly, replaced by the relentless hangover of monthly bills. The mortgage was suffocating, the property taxes were astronomical, and the cost of maintaining their ostentatious lifestyle was bleeding them dry. Mark's confident swagger began to fray at the edges, his business deals suddenly less lucrative than he'd boasted. Jessica found herself staring at the pristine, silent rooms, feeling an anxiety that was as vast and empty as the house itself. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. It was delivered by a courier, demanding a signature, and its thick, creamy envelope felt heavy with importance. It was not from a bank, but from a prestigious law firm, Abernathy, Cole & Pratt. Inside, the language was dense and unforgiving. It spoke of trusts, beneficiaries, and fraudulent transactions. It named the Carter Foundation as the legal owner of their previous home. It stated that the sale they had conducted was null and void and constituted a felony. It demanded the immediate return of the full sale price of the house, $450,000 plus legal fees and damages to the foundation. Failure to comply would result in immediate legal action and criminal charges. The paper trembled in Jessica's hand. "Mark!" she shrieked, her voice echoing in the cavernous foyer. Mark read the letter, his face draining of all color. The Carter Foundation. "What the hell is that? He didn't have a foundation. He was a carpenter!" he sputtered, a vein throbbing in his temple. "This is a mistake. It has to be." But the chillingly precise legal language told them it was no mistake. Panic set in, cold and absolute. Their dream house was a prison built on a foundation of lies. Jessica's first desperate thought was of her father. He had to be behind this. He had to fix it. She drove recklessly to the address she had for the assisted living facility, the one she'd never bothered to visit. She stormed into the lobby, a sterile space that smelled of disinfectant and despair. "I'm here to see Samuel Carter," she demanded of the weary-looking receptionist. The woman typed the name into her computer, her expression flat. "We have no resident by that name, ma'am." "Yes, you do," Jessica insisted, her voice rising. "He was admitted about a month ago. Elderly black man, retired carpenter." The receptionist typed again, then shook her head slowly. "No Samuel Carter. Never has been. Are you sure you have the right place?" Jessica stumbled back out into the parking lot, her mind reeling. If he wasn't here, where was he? Who was in that black car? The questions she'd brushed aside a month ago now screamed in her mind. The nagging feeling had become a full-blown siren. Her father wasn't a simple old man being put out to pasture. He was something else entirely, and she had been played for a fool. Her frantic calls to his old number went straight to a disconnected message. In desperation, she searched through an old address book, a relic from a time when she still cared. She found a number under a D for David Chen, Dad's friend. She remembered a quiet, intelligent man who would occasionally come by to go over papers with her father, someone she had dismissed as unimportant. She dialed, her hands shaking. It rang once before a calm, cold voice answered. David Chen speaking. Mr. Chen. This is Jessica Miller, Samuel Carter's daughter, she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. There's been a terrible mistake with our old house. I need to speak to my father. There was a long, deliberate pause on the other end of the line. A mistake, Ms. Miller. David's voice was like ice, or a consequence. My client is quite busy. However, given the circumstances, I believe a meeting can be arranged. My office, tomorrow at 10. David Chen's office was a world away from the frantic, debt-ridden chaos of Jessica's life. It was a space of quiet power, lined with law books and smelling of old leather and quiet confidence. Jessica sat opposite a vast mahogany desk, her husband Mark beside her, sweating through his expensive suit. He had tried to bluster his way in, but one look from David had silenced him completely. David let them sit in the heavy silence for a full minute before he spoke. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply laid out the facts, each one a hammer blow to Jessica's reality. He explained the trust, the fraudulent sale, and the criminal liability they now faced. But why? Jessica finally whispered, her bravado shattered. Why would he do this? He didn't do this to you, Ms. Miller. David corrected her, his gaze sharp. He did this for you for years. He built a fortress to protect you from the world, and another one to protect you from the fortune he knew could ruin you. The only thing he couldn't protect you from was your own greed. He slid a financial statement across the desk. Jessica's eyes widened as she saw the number at the bottom, a figure so large it seemed impossible, over $5 million. This can't be real, she stammered. It is the result of decades of shrewd, patient investing and a life lived with extraordinary humility, David said. A life he lived so that you could have a normal one. He feared that if you knew about the money, you would see him only as a means to an end. He feared you would become exactly what you became. As if on cue, a side door opened, and Samuel Carter walked in. He wasn't the stooped, defeated man she had last seen. He wore a simple but perfectly tailored blazer, and he stood tall, his presence filling the room not with anger, but with a profound and heavy sadness. He looked directly at his daughter. I never wanted this, he said, his voice etching with the love he still felt. The money was a tool, Jessica. It was supposed to provide security, not replace affection. It was supposed to be a safety net, not a prize to be won by casting me aside. The carefully constructed walls of Jessica's denial crumbled into dust. The full weight of her actions crashed down on her. Not just the legal trouble, but the monstrousness of her betrayal. She had kicked out the one person in the world who loved her unconditionally. She had traded his boundless love for a bigger kitchen and a swimming pool. A guttural sob escaped her lips, a raw, ugly sound of absolute regret. Daddy, she cried, the name she hadn't used in years tearing from her throat. "I'm so sorry. I was so stupid, so horrible." Mark started to speak, to offer some pathetic excuse, but Samuel raised a hand, and he fell silent. Samuel's gaze never left Jessica's tear-streaked face. The resolution was swift and without malice. David Chen explained that if they cooperated fully, turning over the keys to the Northgate house to be sold to cover the money they owed, the foundation would drop the lawsuit and not press criminal charges. They would be left with nothing but their debt and their shame. They lost everything. The dream house, the cars, the respect of their so-called friends. They were forced to move into a small, cramped apartment, the air thick with blame and regret. The trust between father and daughter was shattered. Samuel did not welcome her back with open arms. The wound was too deep. But he didn't close the door forever. He left a sliver of light, a long, difficult path toward a reconciliation that she would have to earn, one painful, honest step at a time. The Carter Foundation, meanwhile, began its work, quietly funding scholarships and safe homes for children who, like Jessica once had, needed a second chance. Samuel found a new purpose, overseeing the work that would be his true legacy. He found a bittersweet peace, knowing he had finally taught his daughter the hardest lesson of all, that her true inheritance was never the $5 million he was hiding, but the priceless love she had thrown away. And so, Samuel Carter's journey from a beloved father to an outcast and back to a man of quiet power serves as a powerful reminder that true wealth is not measured in dollars, but in gratitude, love, and integrity. If this story of consequences and the fight for what truly matters stirred something in you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring narratives about people who learned life's most important lessons. What was the most impactful moment for you?